what I thought I'd do today was talk to you about a little bit about chains. I tend to visit a lot of offices around in Victoria, and most people seem to be using chains now. But what I found is that the chains they're using, they're pretty set in their structures, and they only work for, like, they're not generalised at all. And what I thought I'd do today was just work through building up a simple chain with parameters, because no one out there seems, or 5% of people seem to know what parameters do. And with parameters, if you understand them and the basis of them, you can turn your chains from being quite specific into quite generic chains. And it basically means that you, the users, can set these chains up for yourself rather than relying on someone, you know, one of the senior operators or someone to set up a chain and put it in the library for us. So what I'm going to do is just sort of walk you through a chain from beginning to end, and it's only going to be a simple chain. It's just going to create a view, but we're going to go through and use parameters to like name the view and apply settings to that particular view. So if you haven't used chains before, under Utilities, Chains, we're just going to hit Create, and we're going to create a chain. I'm going to give it a name, just C99 for this demo, chain 99, and hit Write. So at the moment, obviously it's going to do nothing because we've got no commands in it. So the first step, as part of this demo too, I'm going to sort of, those that have used chains in version 10, there's quite a number of features that we've added for version 11, and I'll sort of walk you through some of those features as we go along. So what I'm going to do is get this chain up that creates a view. So I'm just going to hit Insert, and we're going to go down to Views, and we're going to go down to Create View. And the first thing you'll notice about this Create View option is at the moment, I'm just going to give it a view name of New. So we've always been able to do that. But now we've got these extra parameters in here of top, left, bottom, and right. And they enable us to position the view on the screen where we want the view to come up. Previously, we never had that. If you created a view, it would end up coming up in the middle of the screen. So if I was to put 0, 0, and the bottom at 845, it's all pixel based. So I know the size of my screen, 626. Basically hit Write, away it goes. Yep, away it goes, and it writes that particular command out. Now if I do a quick execution or a quick run of that chain, it produces a new plan for me. So there's nothing groundbreaking about that. Okay, what I also want to do is I want to apply settings to that view. Maybe I want the grid on every time that I run this chain to create a new view. So I can just go up into Settings for that particular view and go down to Grid, and then go to Grid Draw, turn that on. And rather than apply this now, the old way when chains first came out was you used to record all the commands as you went along. You actually had to run the chain. Now we've got an option, which was in version 10 actually, and it was called, I'll do it now, it's under Execution, it's called Option Manual. So we can actually take data from that particular panel and save that as a command, so without actually running the command. So Option Manual, capture data from this panel, and to apply this I need to hit the Set button. So I also need to hit the Capture button, and I roll across on Set and capture that button. So it's going to run that panel and then also hit the Set button, and we're going to create a view, and then the grid draw is going to be switched on. So again, nothing groundbreaking about that. I've just got to shut that view first because it's called New at the moment. So if we just run that, get a new view with the grid on. Okay, so that's all well and good, but the view's just called New. What about if you wanted to change the name of that view? That's where parameters come in, where we could set up, instead of naming this view in the first line here, we can actually use what we call a parameter to set the name of our view. So with the intention of being able to modify that parameter later on to a view name of our choice. So we can use the one chain to create, 20 or 30 views, all with different names. So the way we do that is there's just a box on here called use parameters. So we switch that on, and it asks for a parameter here. And we can just type in a parameter. I'm just going to type in view name, just make it up. And I've also got to re-enter the pixels where I want it to end up on the screen. So it's all based around 0, 0s up that point, at that particular point, the top left-hand side. The bottom is down that way, and obviously the right side of the view is in that direction. So 8:45 and 6:26 again. And if I hit right now, it's saved that particular command. Now if I go to my next line that I had there, this option to grid, again, I'd captured the data and I'd also captured the view name in it, being the view new. What I can do, if I want to change that across to the parameter that I just created on this, called view name, I just go into the parameters option, hit pick parameters, and then I just set myself up with a parameter file. Just type that in, C99. I always keep it the same name as my chain. Hit pick. It generates a view of that particular panel. And the parameter I want to be substituted in this view box. So it's easy as just clicking that. It enters it in here. I can go pick all and capture every single field or every single widget on this panel. But at the moment, I just want to capture that one, just so to make this nice and simple so it runs easily. The parameter, you can get 12D to generate a parameter for you, but I've already set it. I set it up in the previous one called view name. So I just type that in, and then I hit set and finish. And what that does is it writes it away, and now when I need to run this chain, I need to provide a parameter value file, the one that I've just written that parameter to. So if I load that up, C99, it's already created that for me from the last thing I did where I said the view name was the parameter. So now, if I hit right again, if I shut that and hit run, it'll run like it normally did. It'll call it new, and why did it call it new? Because in the parameter file, if I open it up, I've got a parameter in there called view name. And if I click under view name, it's a type text. Its name was what I called it, the parameter view name, and the default value it's going to use is called new. So it's just creating a new view. So you've got varying different types of values you can put in a parameter file. There's integers, reals. You can see the list there. At the end of this chain, I'll show you how to use the last one, which is the grid one, which is really interesting, and it allows you to be quite flexible in your chains as well. But we'll just head on with that one. So obviously the next step is, if we wanted to run this now, we'd always get new being the name of the view we're producing. We've got an option here called prompt for parameters, and that's always been in there. And basically, if we write that and we run it from our recalc panel, so C99, what happens is we get the parameter value file come up before we run the chain. So we can actually go through view name, and I could change it to new 3, write and finish, and then it will create a new view based on those parameters that I've just typed in. All that's well and good, pretty easy as well. So, but it's a pretty inelegant way of doing this chain. What we want to do is we want to have a panel that asks us for the name of the view that we want to produce. So what we can do is we can make use of a command that's also in 10 called a prompt command. And I'm just going to go up to the top under commands, do an insert, and I'm going to grab a prompt command from other. So I grab a prompt command there, and what this prompt command does for you, it essentially creates a panel for you. And if anyone's ever created a panel with a macro, yeah, they can be done, but they're quite time-consuming to do. But this allows you to create a panel super easy and super fast. You don't need to know anything about programming to do it. So the prompt title just becomes the title on top of your panel, which is create new plan view. The prompt message, you'll see what the prompt message is. I'll just put plan view. And the parameter for result is basically after we push a button, this particular line returns another parameter, letting us know which button we've pressed or what to do next. So the parameter for result, I'm just going to call new plan view. I'll just copy that because I'm going to need that later. So this is that's dealt with the naming of our panel and a heading on our panel. This next step is what do we want the widgets to display on our panel? So the widgets, just these things up here. So on this particular panel, I just want it to say new plan view. Okay, and one of the good features about version 11 now, if I right-click on the parameter, it comes up with a list of the parameters that I've got in my parameter file. So I want to store what the user types in under the new plan view. I want to store that under the parameter view name and use that. So I right-click and I get a list of those parameters. I've only got one. I'll just call it view name. I've got an option here. Do I want that to be optional? And in this case, no, I don't want that to be optional. So you could have a number of different widgets, and you could have some optional, so grayed out that the user sometimes doesn't need to fill out necessarily. Okay, the buttons. So this is dealing with the buttons at the bottom of our prompt panel. So the buttons, obviously in this case, we're going to want a create button to create this new view. And we're also going to want a finish button as well, just in case we get into our panel and we want to exit from our panel without creating the view, which sometimes happens. So the button I'm going to do is just to create, and the value, when someone pushes this button on my panel, it's just going to return a value into this parameter, new plan view. It's going to return a value called create. I'll just, again, keep them simple. Whatever the button says, that's the value I return. And the finish one as well. I'll pop the finish one on there as well. And I would write that away. And I'll just do an execute just to preview what that panel looks like. So there you go. I've built that panel. The create new plan view was this prompt title up there. The plan view was just a heading of the panel. The widget was the new plan view that's based here. By the way, if you haven't seen this already in version 11, you can move these backwards and forwards to see information, which is very good. Yeah, so you've got new plan view, which corresponds to that section there. And you'll see that it's dragging down the default for the parameter already. It's already looking inside that file. So I've just written that away. And, okay, let's shut that for a sec. And now if I run this, I get prompted with that. And let's make it plan view new 31, create. And it goes down and follows the logical steps down in my chain. Okay, the next step we're going to do is add some conditional statements in there, because the problem is if I go run and hit finish on that, if I change this, hit finish, it still logically proceeds through my chain and creates a new view called 356. So what I need to do is put some flow control into or conditional statements into my chain, so that if someone hits finish, it bails out of my chain. So after the prompt command, I'm just going to do an insert, and I'm going to go down to the conditionals area. And under conditional areas, I'm just going to hit if parameter equals. And the parameter name I'm going to use is from the prompt panel, which was, if I paste it in, it was called new PlanView. And the parameter value I want to test for was, did it return the value finish? So did someone hit the finish button? Hit right. And basically, we've got two stages under that. Two little flags appear. One's on pass and one's on fail. Basically on fail, if someone hasn't hit the finish button, obviously they've hit the create one in this one. So it's just going to fall through the chain and continue on going down, doing the create new view and this option here. So on pass, if the parameter equals finish, what we want to do is change our mode. Instead of continue, we want to change it to a halt command. So that'll bail us out of the chain. So when someone presses finish, it'll test for that and go finish us out of that chain. So again, let's have a look at that. If I run, create, does it the normal way, it just falls through because it's failed. And if I run it with a finish, okay, it just bails out of the chain. Okay, the next thing we have to take into account with this thing is you can't have two views by the same name in 12D, otherwise nothing will happen. So what we've got to do now is put in another conditional statement and test to see whether that view name exists. So I've been very careful when I've been doing this demo. I've been selecting a view name that doesn't exist. So another conditional statement goes in. So I'll just drop that down below this one here. Make it below the new view, testing to see what the new PlanView parameter is. So under here, just do a conditional, and I'll test to see if the view exists. Okay, so if the view exists, and what's my view name? Of course, I could hardwire this in, or I could use a parameter. So I'm just going to use the parameter, and I'm going to use the parameter view name. And what's nice now, one of the newer features about 12D, if you in 11, if you haven't noticed before, what used to happen sometimes is 12D would rename your command for the chain. And sometimes it was undesirable. Sometimes you wanted to leave your name the way it was, the way you'd set it out. That was fine. What 12D will do, it'll keep that name for you now automatically. But if you want the generic name or the name 12D produces, automatically you just got to hit that button there, and it will generate that name for you. So if you muck around with your names and then you want to change them back to what 12D suggests, just hit that button on the side. So anyway, we're going to hit right. Write that one away. And so what do we do on a pass? So if we go down and we type a view name that actually exists, what do we do? Well, on a pass, if it exists already, what we're going to do is we're going to want it to not do anything, but go to the top of our chain and then re-prompt us for another view name. So what we can do is make use of a label command. And the label, I'm just going to put a label at the top of my file, at the top of my chain called start. I haven't created that label yet, but this is telling me to go to the label at the start of my job. So I just hit right. And then I go to the very top of my job, insert a line, go down to the conditionals, and add in the label. The label name, start. So now, when it tests on a pass, it'll go to that name, it'll return back to the top of our chain. On a fail, it'll continue down through the chain and do the views for us. So let's give that a whirl. So PlanView 3, I think it exists somewhere. I'll just shut a few of these down. There you go, PlanView 3 exists. If I hit create, it bails up to the top of the chain again. So it doesn't do anything for me. It just it puts the chain back to the start. So now if I type another one, 354, and create, obviously it creates a new plan view and it falls through to the lines below. Okay. Yeah, so that's a basis of it. I've also, for this too, what you can do is you can actually now copy from chain to chain. So if I wanted to put some data on that particular chain, I've got another chain called C1, and I've got a command in there that actually I've captured the Save and Restore Models button. So if I wanted to copy that, it's just a matter of hitting copy on this one, and I might just drop this after it's created the new view, or actually after it's turned the grid on. If I hit paste, it's pasted that extra line there. So again, I'll write that. And so what happens now is it's actually copied that particular command from chain to chain, and you've got the beauty now, you can actually select multiple lines, and I could copy 3 commands at once across to another chain. So that's really handy. And you see, I was using the same view name parameter in there as well, so it's all set up, this one, and ready to go. So now, this one's an interesting one as well. With this command, with a Save and Restore Models panel, you actually got to hit 2 buttons. You've got to hit the Read button, then the Restore button for it to work. So that's why in this, when I save the panel as an option manual, I've got the 2 buttons there. So I've pressed multiple buttons. I've gone in there and I've applied this file name, which is a VML file that I've previously set up. It's just a simple list of models. And then I've hit a Read and Restore on top of that. So let's give that a burl and see how that runs. So I don't know, call it plan this time. Hit Create. And there you go. There's a panel that's built up in the exact location I wanted, with it reading from the what it was, test VML. So all the models that were in that particular file are now showing up on the screen. Okay, some of the other new features we've got when we build a chain. If you've ever tried to create a chain that solves like super alignments, you know, you build a roundabout and you want to solve the super alignments in an order or something, you always want to insert multiple lines. It's always tough when you insert multiple lines because it's doing a validation on every single line that you put in. So every time I put in new, I get this response up. So what you can do now is you can actually turn off this warning prompt. So I can now insert loads and loads of these new lines without it validating. So it'll only validate it once it starts to run the chain. One of the other good things that helps you when you're running this chain is you can now do multiple selects on your commands and you can lift them up. So if those commands were in the wrong order for some particular reason, you don't have to lift them up one by one like you previously had to do. So you can lift them up or drop them down. One of the other things that was a real pain was if you wanted to turn off some of the, if you wanted to make these inactive, so untick these boxes, you used to have to go into every single command to do that. Now there's up there, there's a deactivate and there's an activate command. So if you have those all highlighted, and then I push deactivate, you can see they're all deactivated. So you can use Shift and you can use a control to select commands in any particular order there. So they're really good user-friendly ones that have come into version 11. You can also, as I'm about to do now, delete. I'm going to delete all those lines. So do multiple deletes if you need to. Right. With parameters, like you saw, that was pretty easy putting that parameter through and using it in every subsequent command after that. If you've got a really complicated panel, sometimes you want to keep track of what the value of that parameter is. So what we've done is we've put in an option called a print parameter. And what that'll do, it'll print the value that the parameter is holding at the time into the output window. So it was quite tough when you were running change in the past. You were a bit blind. You'd sort of run through and you really didn't know what value your parameters were taking. So they've put in a couple of other commands for us as well. So I might just extend to this. And under new, under other, we've got another couple of commands that are there. First off, I want to print the parameter, but actually what I'll do first is I'll clear the output window. So we can do that now through a chain. So if I go clear the output window, you'll be able to see the print parameter a lot clearer. Hit right, and then I'm going to put in a print parameter command. And the parameter, again, I just right click, view name, and write. So now when I run this chain again, create, it goes away, creates that new view, new 387. If I take a look at my Outlook window now, move this slightly, you can see there, I can't move the mouse, oh yeah I can, view name, that's the parameter I'm using, and at that particular time where I asked it to in the chain, its value was new 387. So it's a fantastic debug tool if you're running a chain or running chains of chains or that type of thing. You can follow your parameters through the chain. Okay, one of the other options they've enabled us to do is we can actually take, if you're using SLX files, you can actually take a snapshot of the way the SLX file appeared when it was run through the chain, and you can dump out a view as well. So in this case, if I wanted to dump out, this chain was, imagine it was 100 lines long, and I wanted to see at line 40 what this particular view looked like before I did something else to the strings in it, I could dump it out as an image. So under here, just an insert, and under views this time, there's a dump view image. And I just got to tell it what view I want to dump out. And obviously this case, I'm not hardwiring it. I'm going to use a parameter and use my view parameter view name. So it's going to dump out the panel view name to a JPEG format here. And I'm just going to call it, I don't know, temp or something. And let's copy that and give it a name. Write that away. So now when I run this, plan 23 this time, run it. The last thing it does, takes a snapshot of that view, and then if I was coming to check it later on, because some of these chains may take, half a day to run or something, depending on what you're doing. And save that. Let's try that again. It existed already, so it's put me to the back of the top of the chain. No, for some reason didn't create it that time. I won't worry about that. Okay, there's the curse. One thing I didn't mention above that as well was if I insert just after the print parameter command, you can actually write commands to the output window as well. So as well as clearing the output window, you can go to other, and I could go right to an output window, and just the output message in this one may be just success, view created. So that you can just, again, part of the debugging process, and write that, and I'll run that again. So now in my output window, I'll get success view created. So that's pretty good. Again, helping you debug this thing. Okay. So that sort of ends off that very simple chain where we just use one parameter all the way through that created the name of the view, basically. I wanted to show you a little trickier one as well. What we have in Victoria, a lot of guys they're doing subdivisions down there, and in the subdivisions they've usually got a boxing tin, and they've usually got a tin for their surface. So there's a surface there in the perspective, so that might be their finished surface, and then they'll have a boxing tin below that. So like a boxing tin. So it'll be two separate things. What they're doing at the moment down there anyway is they're putting all that into a super tin. So the tin super looks like this. If we edit it, the super design tin looks like this. They have their ground down first, then the boxing tin second, and then the design tin third. So what they do when they calculate their volumes and things is they just turn their design tin on and off. So if you're doing like a tin to tin volume and you've got the design tin off, basically you're calculating you're calculating down from your ground tin down to your boxing. If you've got the design tin switched on in your super tin, you're calculating from your ground tin to the design tin. So that's the way they're using it. So I wanted to show you quickly about the parameters for grid using this super tin. So you can quickly turn this on and off, this design replace, turn this active on and off just by basically a chain. So what we'll do is we'll go out to utilities, create another chain, and I'll just call it add tin demo, and write that one away. And what I'm going to do, going to use the good old command prompt again. I might just change that to yes and update it, redraw that view. So use that execution, option manual, command again. Let's capture the data out of the edit super tin panel, capture the button, which is update, and I want to take a parameter this time of that, and I want to take a parameter of the actual grid. So I can go pick parameters, and I'm just going to put this into a add tin demo PBF file. Just go to pick, and this time I'm going to pick the actual grid. And this is really, really powerful because in this case, this is quite a simple panel, but you could use this grid parameter for PPFs and apply manis and other things like that. So if I click that, it saves it as a grid panel. And I'll just give it a parameter name. I'm going to just call it grid. And I'm just going to set and finish. Now I'm going to show you what it's done under add tin demo. If I open up this, it should have one parameter in it now called grid. And when I open it up, it's got whatever was in that particular grid at the time. So what I'm going to quickly do is create another parameter value file with a modified grid so that then I can apply my chain with the same chain, just with a second PVF that runs through it. So I could just going to change the name of that to demo 2, and I'm not going to display the design in this one. So I'm just going to hit right. So now I've got two parameter files, one with design on and one with design off. So I hit finish. And now what I also want to do under this one here is I want to insert, underneath it. And I want to insert under views, I want to do a redraw all view so I can see the changes straight away. So I hit right. So now basically, when I run this chain, if I run it with this first chain up here, the first parameter file up there called add tin demo, it's basically going to run it, and it's going to produce exactly what we see now. The finished surface is going to be on. The design tin's going to be on. If I run it with the second one, and write that, and run it, the way it goes, and it runs it with a second PVF on, so the second parameter on. So you can do it that way. You can run it with separate parameter files and get a totally different result out of your chain. The beauty of this now is they've given us an extra command that we can use when we go and create some toolbars. So I've just created a simple user toolbar here where you can see at the top I've called a button design, I've called a chain, and I've called a chain with a PVF, so a parameter variable file with it, a parameter value file with it. The first one being add tin demo PVF, and then I give it which chain I'm running. Likewise, you see the bottom one, it's showing subgrade, so it's showing chain PVF, and I'm running that add tin demo to .pvf. So I'm running different PVFs with running it through the same chain. So I've already got that set up. So I've got a grey button here for design, so I can get rid of that panel now. And essentially, I created two buttons on my toolbar, one that allows me to show me design, the other one that allows me to show the subgrade. So that grid command to capture the grid as a parameter is really, really good. Yeah. That's it, yeah. Thanks.